Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Naomi Steinberg.
Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. We are creating history here today. And the history is that we have never, in the 58 years of IAPH, had a session led by women, for women, and on subjects that concern women and gentlemen. For those who don't know me, I'm Naomi Steinberg, and I'm the founding chair of the IAPH Women's Forum, and I also co-chair the IAPH Long Range Planning and Review Committee. I hope everybody has overcome last night. Was it fun last night? Let's give a round of applause to last night and to the Port of Hamburg. So welcome to the Women's Forum. And before we go on to some other things, to our main program, it so happened that in addition to the fact that the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach, which is next door, have women chairs of their boards. And the Port of LA, as everybody knows, has a woman director. This area also has a woman congresswoman. And one of her staffers is here, Annette McDonald, to read a short welcoming note from the congresswoman who couldn't be here herself. Annette, come.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Janice Hahn Representative Annette McDonald, and at the moment, the Congresswoman is in Washington, D.C., and she really wanted to be here, so she asked me to say a few words. So, I wish I could be here with you today for this session, Women at the Helm, but I'm in Washington, D.C. Thank you for all your participating in this important conference. As we all know, ports and international trade is a national and global economic and job creation. As the representative of the nation's largest port, I have seen firsthand the integral role ports play in providing good-paying jobs and sustaining our communities in every congressional district in the nation. My work in D.C. is focused heavily on ports infrastructure. I started the Congressional Port Caucus to ensure that Congress would understand the issues facing our seaports are integral to strengthening our economy and serve as a member of the, and I also serve as a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, where I advocate for the critical infrastructure improvement. Recently, I was selected to serve on the panel on the 21st century freight transportation. This new transportation panel is tasked with examining the current state of freight transportation in the United States and improving ways to strengthen the United States economy through an efficient intermodal freight network. It is my mission to champion legislation that strengthens our nation's infrastructure, from our ports to our bridges, our roadways, and our railways, and I look forward to working with you to get this done. If you have any ideas of legislation or improving our nation's port or infrastructure, I would love to work with you And if you have time, please contact our office. Thank you very much.
I'm going to move away from this. As, would it be okay if I'm standing here? Yeah. As you know, one of the most important organizations that IAPH works with is the IMO, the United Nations International Maritime Organization. We have a status of official observers there. And as Geraldine is one of our representatives at IMO, and she reached out to IMO for the better connection with the Women's Forum. One of the senior ladies from IMO, Pamela Tansey, was going to be here, but something happened last minute and she had a conflict and she couldn't come. However, she sent us a letter introducing the film that IMO made, Women in the Helm, on women, and we are going to show the video here today, and we're also going to read a letter that Pamela sent as an introduction to the film. Pamela is the Senior Deputy Director, Technical Cooperation Division of IMO. She joined the organization in 1985, when it was still largely male-dominated, and that prompted her to establish a stronger strategy for the integration of women in the maritime sector. Funding for a gender program was secured in 1990, and the program is still going strong. Her motto is training, visibility, recognition. And she says, there have been women managers for as long as there have been women. We've always been here. They just couldn't see us. So here is the letter that Pamela sent. Dear friends, it is a huge disappointment not to be with you at the IAPH conference in LA. On a personal note, I was so looking forward to share our experiences as women in the challenging world of ships, ports, and harbors. It was not to be this time, but I do hope you will keep IMO on your list so that hopefully we can participate in the near future. If I can summarize IMO's program for the integration of women in the maritime sector, which this year celebrates its 25th anniversary, I would say that our motto is training, visibility, recognition. In the 1990s, when many maritime training institutes found it difficult to admit women, thereby blocking a seafaring career from the start, our focus was to speak to maritime administrations and institutes worldwide just to open their eyes to the resources they were excluding. We also provided women-only fellowships to start redressing the training balance. Building on a successful decade of sensitization and eye-opening, and with a greater number of women now employed at the middle management level, IMO launched a campaign to set up regional associations for women working maritime ministries and in the ports, so as to give them a forum to exchange technical information, to share experiences, and also to help harmonize the implementation of IMO conventions. From the first forum established in the Pacific Islands in 2004, the list has grown to 6, with 3 in Africa, one of IMO's technical cooperation priority areas, 1 in Asia, and the newest, which was launched in 2012 in Latin America. The trickiest area has always been seafaring. After all, not many men want to go to sea either. It appeals to a very specific type of personality. The issue of women seafarers was the subject of a TC research project back in 1992. Since then, the aspect of seafaring addressed by our program was specifically the lack of training berth, which is an area of particular difficulty for women cadets since they tend to have greater problems in accessing funding. We are working with the Global On-Board Training Center with a view to funding a number of berths on training ships. Just recently, with support from the government of the Republic of Korea, we held a joint conference in Busan to look at the predicted shortage of seafarers and the potential role of women in meeting that need. We shall shortly be developing a global strategy for women seafarers using the outstanding information provided by all the regional participants, who also decided to mark the deliberations by drafting a declaration of intent, whereby they engage themselves to foster greater awareness of the role of women as a valuable resource to the maritime industry. They will achieve this by encouraging their national authorities to support the global strategy and by championing better and more equal employment provisions for both genders within their national policies. The new IMO video entitled "Women at the Helm" was shown for the first time at the Busan conference, and I hope that you will all find points of interest in the issue it highlights across the interviews with successful maritime women. Indeed, you will recognize one in particular who plays an outstanding role in IMO's technical committees. So many thanks indeed to Geraldine for agreeing to add her voice to IMO's message. All the best to you for a successful conference, and best wishes from this small but tenacious UN agency on the banks of the River Thames in London. And now we will see the video.
Shipping has historically been a male-dominated industry, and that tradition runs long and deep. However, through its global program on the integration of women in the maritime sector, IMO is making a concerted effort to help the industry move on from that tradition and to help women achieve a representation within it that is more in keeping with the 21st century expectations.
The IMO program is called the Integration of Women in the Maritime Sector, integration being the key word. This program is the foundation of the way IMO implements MDG 3 through the provision of fellowships for training and the establishment of regional networks so that women can exchange fully and easily information and technical advice across their regions.
As these networks reveal, while good progress is being made in many parts of the world, there remain practical, social, and cultural obstacles to be overcome, and there are very significant regional differences in the level of acceptance achieved by women in shipping. WAMESA, the Association for Women in the Maritime Sector in East and Southern Africa, draws its members from 24 different countries. Its current chairman is Meenakshi from Mauritius, who works in her country's maritime administration. She pays tribute to the part played by IMO in helping to develop her career.
Thanks to IMO, I have been able to go to the World Maritime University to pursue my postgraduate studies in maritime affairs, specializing in shipping management, which was also very important for me because it helped me to understand so many things about the industry and encouraged me to pursue my career in the maritime administration.
Nancy Karagithu has risen to become Director General of the Kenya Maritime Authority. She graduated from the International Maritime Law Institute, another IMO establishment, and also greatly values the influence of WAMESA.
We are very few at the top, and this is very encouraging. We've built a network that is very supportive of one another and also aims and is working towards demystifying the maritime sector for young girls, the future female workers of the maritime industry. So we've started mentorship programs across the board, and this we believe is going to be very, very instrumental.
But Nancy also recognizes the challenges that still lie ahead.
It's cultural, it's social, and a bit of it, or to a great extent, is the ignorance. Maritime careers are not very well known. It's a sector open to a very few people. So we need to spread the message, and that's why we are targeting schools so that the young people, as they are going through the school system, they know that the maritime sector is a career option.
It is a point that is echoed by Geraldine Knatz, Executive Director of the Port of Los Angeles.
I really think that in order to get more women into the maritime sector, we really have to really reach them when they're in college. I was exposed to the port while I was in college. I never really thought about a career in a seaport. I didn't, like most people, I didn't think about seaports. You know, you just go shopping and you don't think about how the stuff gets there.
Normita, a port operations manager in Mauritius, agrees that the maritime industries would benefit from a higher profile, but she also detects clear signs that things are changing for the better.
I was lucky enough to be employed as manager of port operation. Actually, I'm the first woman in Mauritius and at the Port Authority to have such a post. And it's a sign that the management, you know, there's a change in the mindset.
It's a similar story elsewhere in the world. In Norway, for example, Brigitte Lieden, General Secretary of Young Ship International, also feels things are changing for the better.
I believe that there is quite a strong shift. I think there are more women coming into the industry now, so we just need to welcome them in a good way. I also think that within all parts of the world, women are taking on a stronger role, kind of requiring more space. So I think that we will also naturally and organically see more female leaders in the future.
There are undoubtedly more and more women making their presence felt in areas such as policymaking, regulation, management, finance, and the promotion of shipping. Few women in shipping enjoy a higher profile or greater responsibility than Mary Landry, a Rear Admiral in the United States Coast Guard. As District Commander, Rear Admiral Landry is responsible for U.S. Coast Guard operations covering 26 states, more than 1,200 miles of coastline, and 10,300 miles of inland waterways. She too recognizes the importance of IMO's work in helping the industry to welcome more women into its ranks.
Globally, I think that leadership role is important also to think about the next generation of maritime leaders, whether maritime employees or leaders, whether you are on a ship, on shore, doing support work in a port, no matter what you do, shipping is so vital to our global economy. And I think it's important as a leader, IMO is a leader in the world and have done a tremendous job. They need to also be a leader in preparing that next generation, and that next generation should be women and men.
More women are also finding their way into seafaring careers. Although this still remains a very difficult sector of the industry for women to make their way in, not just because of the entrenched traditions that still prevail, but also for a host of practical reasons that are not easily overcome. Kirstine Roberts, a second officer with Farstad Shipping, finds male colleagues generally receptive to her presence on board ship.
I do find that guys are actually very supportive of having a female on board because it gives them a little bit more diversity and mellows them down a little bit from their male environments. So I think it's really positive to get some more females into seafaring.
There is no doubt that increasing opportunities for women to serve at sea would be beneficial for so many sectors of the industry. And Just as society as a whole benefits from the full and active participation of women in the work environment, so does the shipping industry benefit from their wholesale integration into the workforce.
This year marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of a special program for women in development, the integration of women in the maritime sector through IMO. And we can safely say that empowering women fuels thriving economies across the world. It spurs growth and development, and it benefits every single stakeholder in the global maritime community.
That was nice. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator of our panel, Anne Sigrid Hamran, who is the Port Director of the Port of Oslo, Norway. Anne Sigrid has a wide-ranging experience in urban planning and infrastructure with both the private and public sectors. Prior to joining the Port of Oslo, she worked at the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, where she was responsible for the planning and construction of Oslo's road network, and also previously served as a project manager at the Norwegian Railway Company. Ms. Hamran considers herself a feminist and a long-standing role model for women working within urban and transportation planning and infrastructure. Please join me in welcoming Anne Sigrid Hamran.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to be here and talk about women, especially as female leaders in the port, which is my concern. But I will give a short presentation of what we have done in Oslo. First, I would like to say something about Oslo in short. This is the Christmas presents. And then, Oslo is not a large port in the world, but in Norway, it is a rather big port. We have 200,000 TEUs yearly, and that's what we are proud of. We do in the port urban development and passenger traffic in the city center, which changed the whole port. So this will be the center of the city, which earlier was the center of the port. And then we concentrate the cargo activity to the south of the city, and we get less space and have to be more efficient. I was the first female port director in Norway. We are not that many in the world, but we are some. And this is my colleague in the Oslofjord. There is a need for more female leaders in the port. This picture is brand new. I'm sorry for that, because this was in a conference this March, so we have a long way to go. But in Oslo, after 10 years, we have 50% of the leaders, they are women. We are very proud of that. I would like to give you some milestones in Norwegian about the women's history. I think it was New Zealand that was the first country with the right to vote for women. And I think that was back in 1893, as early as that. And then Australia and Finland in 1906, and then Norway. And we celebrate this year that we have had the right to vote for 100 years in Norway. And you have always to look at what is the symbolic heavy thing in the country. And in Norway, is cross-countryside skiing. So in 1954, we had the first national ski championship for women was organized. That was an important point. In 1979, we had a special Gender Equality Act about for women, mostly for women. And then in 2002, we had an act that said that either gender should be represented by 40% in all public limited companies. And that was very controversial. But at that time, it was only 3% of the boards were women in Oslo, in Norway, and that is not good enough. If we look at the employment rates, we are very happy in Norway. We have high employment rates, but more interesting just now is to compare it to the female employment rates, which also is very high in Scandinavia. And what does that mean? Actually, it also means that the fertility rate is high, and that is interesting. Gender balance is better business. It has been proven time and time again to lead more in innovation, better business performance, and corporate governance. Where as a women, we have to watch out for being archetypes. That's a challenge for women, I think. The bitch is not what we want to be, even though we like to get things done. Or we don't want to be the mascot. That is easily to be when you are alone in an organization, or a witch. Neither do we want to be a mother for our colleagues, or a Madonna. And the Amazon, the warrior, it's so difficult. What do we have to do? This comics is taken from a book made in Denmark some years ago about women in the railway company in Denmark. And of course, it is about a woman who works all night and all day long to make some notes. And her female colleagues enter the room and say, "You don't have to do that. It's only a note." But then she said, on the other hand, you are a female, you are a leader, a manager leader. Work harder, work harder. I think you can recognize that. How do you get the women? You have to work harder to get them. How to find X? Here it is. As simple as that. You just have to pick women. What is a qualification? This is also a comic from the Danish book, and it is about a discussion about how the railway should be. And the women, she's talking about how to concern about children in this. And the man, of course, says that we would appreciate if you're arguing on your qualifications, not because you are a woman. And she answered, to being a woman is one of my qualifications. Are there differences between male and female leaders? Yes, there are. Women can fly. Of course, they can't fly, but in the Port of Oslo, I don't think I could get my male leaders to do that. So at least female leaders can jump. If you have a woman, then you got the whole package. You don't got a woman in man clothes. You got another focus. Maybe I took this picture only to show you my grandchild. No, I didn't, but it is. I have this picture because one of the things that I have done in the Port of Oslo is to make a Christmas party for the children. And that is how we are doing. We are doing such as rare things. But believe me, it's magic when Santa Claus comes by the boat of the port and until our building. That is magic. And every children in the port remember that. So children are, women are different from men. This is how I had at work. So if you want women, just do it. Now I'm going to introduce our first speaker, and that is Mrs. Marsha Ferranto. She's president and CIO of the Women Transportation Seminar International, a global organization dedicated to the professional advancement of women in transportation. VTS International and the VTS Foundation located in Washington, D.C., Mrs. Ferranto is responsible for overall administration, management, and operations. She is also chairman of the board for Sandy Spring Museum in Sandy Spring, Maryland. Please welcome Mr. Marsha Ferranto.
Thank you, Anne, and good morning, IAPH. Greetings from WTS International. I am so thrilled to be here today representing this organization and being part of your program. Let me tell you a little bit about WTS International, and it'll give me some credit, some authority to be talking on what I hope to talk on this morning. And that is WTS International is an association whose mission is to build the future of transportation through the advancement of women, through the global advancement of women. I think that the one most important thing to notice is that WTS is not, I repeat, not a women's organization. Because who better to help build the future of transportation through the global advancement of women than the men holding the positions to do so? So at WTS International, and this isn't a WTS International commercial, by the way, but I do want you to understand what we're doing globally out of Washington, D.C. to help affect the change that hopefully will impact ports and harbors. WTS is working very hard to attract, retain, and advance women globally in transportation. We focus on ports and harbors, aviation, transit, rail, roads and highways, and the automotive industry. We are absolutely committed to workforce development through the advancement of women. One of the ways that we're attracting women into the industry is through a program that we currently have called Transportation U. It focuses on girls between the ages of 13 and 18. And what we are looking to do is to build the awareness of all the different kinds of transportation careers available to them. And those careers can lead to a viable career. Opportunities, choices are limitless. We also have student chapters all around the country. We're looking to expand them globally. And those student chapters are, again, comprised of men and women. And we are hoping to either lead them into a transportation field, or we are trying to expose them to the transportation field and leaders after they have already chosen that field. It has been very successful. And we continue to grow and expand our student chapters. In looking to retain women, we're involved in a lot of research. Now, we can't save the world, but we can save transportation. And so our research is very much focused on the baseline of where women are today in transportation. And once we create that baseline, we are working towards creating best practices for all companies globally to be able to use inside their organizations to help affect the change that we believe is so necessary in the transportation industry. One of the articles I recently read in the Catalyst Research it was titled, "Pipelines, Broken Promise." That if we just give it enough time, things will work itself out. Women will start being leaders, and they will start holding the positions of authority. Well, over the last 15 years, women have been graduating with advanced degrees in record numbers. Companies around the globe have implemented diversity and inclusion programs to eliminate the structural biases and to foster women's partnership in leadership. And yet, today, folks, we have a world average of top female executives holding at a solid 8%. I have to give a shout out to South Korea because they're the highest and they're at 30%. People's Republic of China, we're looking at 19%. European Union, 9%. United States of America, 5%. So what I'm here today to do is to identify just a few solutions to help identify the leaks that are currently in our pipeline. The one solution I would like to bring to your attention is called the 70-20-10 model for leadership development. Studies show that leadership development is 70% mostly affected by on-the-job experience, 70%. 20% is built from relationships. 10% from formal training programs. Most of our companies take the women in their companies and put them through formal training programs. When the solution is held in the big roles, not the formal programs. Career advancement is often within our industry, the big roles are given to the men, the formal programs are given to the women. The second very important note that I would like to mention, and I am a huge advocate for mentoring to a point. Women are mentored, men are sponsored. The difference is that men have the opportunity and the propensity to connect themselves with other men who directly, purposefully bring each other up within an organization. My challenge to you today, both men and women, men, sponsor a woman. Be purposeful in that effort. Women, choose a sponsor. Be purposeful in that effort. It has been shown to lead to great success when advancing to the highest levels. So at WTS International, this is what we're focused on. We're focused on helping women advance We're focused on giving organizations tools to use to help women advance. Companies such as Parsons Brinkerhoff, AECOM, CH2M Hill, Parsons are all very dedicated to the advancement of women and support the organization to make sure that we can continue to do the work that we're doing. So thank you very much. And at this time, I will turn the mic over back to Anne.
Thank you so much, Marcia. Our next guest is from the Netherlands, and that is Mrs. Karin Oysel, and she's president in the Women's International Shipping and Trade Association, also known as VISTA. And I'm proud to tell you that in the Port of Oslo, we have framed our work for gender equality in a local VISTA group. She's also the Chief Executive Officer of the International Shipping Company Management Facility Group. Having worked in the maritime industry since the age of 18, Karin Oysel was just 23 years old when she became one of the shareholders of Management Facilities Group. After a management buyout in 2011, Oysel became the majority shareholder of the company, which partly owns and manages a fleet of 55 product, oil, chemicals, and dry cargo vessels. She holds leadership positions in a number of national and international associations and organizations, and sits on the board of directors for 6 international maritime-related companies located in the Netherlands, Sweden, Finland, and Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Karin Oysel.
Ladies and gentlemen, of course, Geraldine, Naomi, thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to present WISTA to all of you. But I would like to start with something else, because Anne-Sigrid said it in the beginning. I bought a company when I was 23, and we created a quite good company. But one of the things and one of the problems in life is that people are not aware of our industry and of our sector and of the great things our sector brings. So what did I do in order to convince the government and ministers, but also the people in the audience, to make them aware of the fantastic industry I'm working in? And that's when I would like to say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome in my world. Please start the movie. Thank you. So was that impressive or not? And I'm very proud to be a Dutch person, so I'm very proud that something this big is possible in a small country like the Netherlands, because we are tiny compared to the US, and you saw our canals. So with this vessel, we have 10 centimeters spare on each side of the vessel to go through the locks, which it's very amazing. And I couldn't be here earlier for the meeting because I actually had another special vessel launchings last Saturday, which fulfills me always with pride because I feel it like the born of a new baby, and it lasts for at least 25 years, so very impressive. I would like to take a little bit a different approach. Of course, I'm going to say something about WISTA, but what I found very interesting is the remark of you that there's only 8% of women in CEO positions. And I'm an example in that respect, and someone who's a little bit contradictory, because my life story starts that I don't have any higher education. I entered into this business on my 18th by coincidence. On my 23rd birthday, I was asked to, okay, the company doesn't go well, why don't we start up a new company? Okay, what would that mean for me as a person? I had no entrepreneurs in the family. My father, who I would like to spar with, was passed away already. I had no capital, but still I thought, why not? You can always choose for the safe things in your life. So I don't have any maritime background whatsoever, but decided to do it. And after a couple of years, 2 captains on 1 vessel turns out not to be good. I grew a lot, I learned a lot, and decided to take the next step, and that is buying the majority of the shares. But when you're 23 and you are being asked by one of the technicians saying, okay, Karen, we have to do a dry dock of the vessel, and it will cost approximately $500,000. Do you agree with that or not? I mean, how can I give an answer on a technical thing like that, besides having trust in the people I work with? And trust and building bridges, I think that's what I'm good at. And that's also one of the reasons why, besides my company, where at this moment we have about 1,000 seafarers, of which only 3 are lady, is the way for me to go forward and spend a lot of time on an association like WISTA. I love the movie of Pamela, and if you saw it correctly, there were 4 ladies interviewed, of which Geraldine was one, but it was at the WISTA conference last year. Pamela was there, one of the speakers, and we had a great session on leadership. But let me focus a little bit on WISTA, because that's the role where I was for. And what is WISTA? So just like I think your organization, we started in 1974 with only a group of female brokers, and in turn, and we grew, and the growth I'm going to show a little bit later. So after a couple of years, we had our first annual conference, and this year, actually, we're going to have our conference for the 33rd time in Montreal, so rather close. So I'm going to challenge the ladies who are here. Please try it and join us, because you will be impressed by the number of speakers, and Pamela will be one of them. And one of the other speakers actually will be Katarina Stransel from Intertanko, who won our Personality of the Year award last year. So we are a global organization. We are represented in 31 countries just now, with roughly 1,800 or 1,900 members. We decided to choose a structure in which every board member has a responsibility for a area in the world where we have our membership. And I'm going to highlight, because these women for me are all role models, and I'm going to highlight maybe 2 of them. Going to the left side, Katarina, oh, and I'm terrible at last names, so I'm only going to say Katarina from Greece. She's born and raised in the US, but has an obvious Greek last name, so she lives in Greece and has been living there for the last, I think, 20 years. But she's responsible for the North and South Americas. which is very important because 18% of our membership is actually at this side of the pound, I think is the word, pound, yeah, water. And we are not only active in the US, but we also are active in Peru, working on Colombia, and I hope next week we will have a setup in Argentina. But Katerina, in her private life, because for us this is a voluntary organization, Katerina in her private life is a banker, but not an ordinary banker, only for refinancing structures, unless it's about 100 million euros deal. You don't have to talk to her, because it's not worthwhile, the money. The other one I would like to point out is Jasmin Fichte. She is living in Dubai, and she's one of the absolute role models in that area. You can hear in her name, she's not from that region originally, but she's from Germany, and she won the award for Best Maritime Law Firm, I think already for the fifth time in Dubai. And if you hear her life story and the difference she can make for a lot of women over there, it's very impressive. And then Tossan, this is the last one I'm going to pick out. Tossan is a lawyer. She works in Nigeria, and she's responsible for the African region, which is at this moment Nigeria and Ghana. But we are working on Djibouti, terrible, Lebanon. We just had India as a new member, yeah, very unfortunately, but all due to the international regulations, we could not start up something in Iran, which is a pity because we're not a political organization, but if we are in one room with others, which would affect our daily business, then we have an issue. So we could not do that. So what's our mission and vision? And it's quite similar to the previous speaker. That is that we want to be acknowledged as a professional and reputable shipping organization with a focus on improving levels of competition in the shipping industry. One of our good things is our mentorship program, and I'm going to say a little bit about it. But what is so different from our organization than any other is that we are not focused on only one piece of the total chain. We are represented in every part of that chain. So not only ship owners, not only cargo owners, but the whole chain and all these functional categories. So all these offshore LNG cruise vessels, tugs, towage, name it. And there's where the fun part is, because of course I had to put in a picture of a lady we know who's responsible for the Port of Houston. And we put in a picture of two ladies who have a yacht brokering company, and the ladies downstairs are the future generation because they are Turkish shipyard owners, two of them at least. But what is our added value? That's the main question. Because I've put one word in there which is absolutely a no-go. Normally you're not going to put in what is the added value of an association. That's friendships. Not really done. But to give you a good example of what our added value is through these friendships and knowing each other, we gain a lot of business. Because in the end, it's all about business as well. So of course, I actually gained 9 vessels extra into my fleet, and if I had an issue with one of my captains in France, for me it was one phone call away, and I had the right people, Beatrice, so I'm making a kind of a bridge to you, and the guys in my office were quite impressed by that. At this moment I'm talking to Caterpillar Finance, taking over a couple of their vessels. I would never have met those people, at least not talking this kind of business, if I was put in contact via a WISTA member. So for us, it's not only having the network and mentorship, but actually doing business in the end. And what is in it for our members? And what is in it for a lot of us? These, I'm just focusing on the international links because that is why I'm here at the, oh, this is a tip, I have to pronounce it in Dutch, IAPH, because I'm looking at it from an international umbrella. We have a close cooperation with the European ship owners, with the Dutch ship owners, name it. But from an umbrella point of view, we have a very close cooperation with these organizations. And I'm very proud, Young Ship is one of them. And we have a mentorship program in place over there. And I'm going to end with later on with a couple of slides, just pictures, and you will be impressed by the new generation. And I'm only 43, but I feel old if I see those youngsters and what they already achieved. Propeller Club is a typical one, which also on various national levels we have been working with, Intertanko, recently ITF, and I'm going to show you 2 pictures where it's directly going to go to our membership. Because one of our countries, WISTA Spain, but also WISTA the Netherlands, have a mutual conference together with the ITF. And ITF is, of course, the labor union for the seafarers. So we try to build the bridges and make sure we all speak the same voice. So if any one of you would be in Barcelona in the next weeks, please join us. And the next one is a very nice one, which might be very interesting for you as well, is that together with World Maritime University, they announced a global leadership program for next year. And that is of direct interest for our members, and that's also the link to IMO. And we were talking about role models and how to visualize our industry. So last year we did a survey, and you can see that you see a lot of familiar faces, but for me, my personal role models would be Mary Landry, US Coast Guard, Mrs. Mafong, who's in the left center, who's from Nigeria. The ladies next to that are 2 role models for the young generation. The lady on the left side is Despina from Cyprus, and last week she's been elected in the board of directors of the Chamber of Shipping in Cyprus, and she's only 20 years of age. So there is a future generation going to make a big difference, and of course next to her it's Birgit de Joden. Pamela was speaking at our conference, and you saw 4 of the other ladies there as well. And I'm on purpose put in Alexandra Agnostis of Total Marine Solutions, working on environmental issues and based here in Fort Lauderdale. But you can also already see that besides having a serious conference, one of the best things is the way to end it. And I think we did it a little bit yesterday as well. We have a lot of fun, and we are aware of the positions we're in, but we hope to be the role models for the next generation. We are, but just like you said, it's for men and women, and I think the only way to go forward is by cooperating, and that's why I highly appreciate this invitation. I think we should go more in details via email or when meeting each other. And I want to thank you for your attention, and hopefully you have several questions for me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karin. I mentioned when New Zealand and Finland and Norway got women's right to vote. The Netherlands was in 1919, and the United States of America was in 1920. And that is early, so I don't think that is a coincidence that just we are here on the podium now. Our final guest this morning is Port of Long Beach Harbor Commission President Susan Wise. Long Beach Harbor is a neighbor port to Los Angeles here in California. Ms. Wise, an attorney and Long Beach resident since 1974, was first appointed to the Long Beach Harbor Commission in December 2008 and is now serving her second term as a president. Ms. Wise has experience in both commercial and civil litigation. She has also served in a mediator for the Los Angeles Superior Court since 2004 and a hearing officer for the Long Beach Civil Service Commissioner since 2006. She also has served in leadership roles with the Long Beach Bar Association, Women Lawyers of Long Beach, as well as the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. She received her law degree from the University of Chicago Law School. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Susan Weiss.
Good morning, everyone. It continues to amaze me how fortunate I am that I am part of the maritime industry at this point in my life. And it is a great honor for me to be in front of you this morning and to be on this, share this podium with these wonderful women. This discussion is about the evolving role of women in the maritime industry, and that's a subject that's very important to me. But you have to know, I have not spent my life in the maritime industry. As Ann said, I'm a lawyer, and I don't practice maritime law. But I've always taken a leadership role in my community, which just happens to be the home to one of the largest ports in the United States and the world, and that's Long Beach, California. And now, I find myself president of the commission, which oversees the operation of that port. The Long Beach Board of Harbor Commissioners is the 5-member governing body for the port, and we are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council and represent the varied interests of the 500,000 citizens of Long Beach. The port, just as your port, is the primary economic engine for our region, and in Long Beach alone, it provides 1 out of 8 jobs. So as a harbor commissioner, I am tasked with setting policy for the port along with my fellow board members. And so it's our responsibility to protect those jobs, at the same time to improve the lives of our residents, and on top of that, to ensure the operation of the port remains competitive for the benefit of the region, the state, and the nation. So what have been my experiences in the maritime industry? Who have been my role models? What do I see for women in the maritime industry? And how do we make opportunities for women more accessible? Well, before I studied law, I studied history. And so I like to go back to the beginning to see how things started. The Port of Long Beach was dedicated in 1911, the same year that the women in California won the right to vote. And as you can see from some of these early photos from our archives, during the first 50 years, women were around, but they weren't exactly part of the crew. In fact, they were more decorative than functional. But the women of Southern California, like all the women who settled the West, the American West, were pioneers and innovative population. And they worked side by side with their husbands, their fathers, their brothers, and their sons, and tamed the Wild West. And so we fast forward. Now, a century later, the Port of Long Beach is breaking new ground in its own right. We've grown to be premier U.S. gateway for trans-Pacific trade. We're a trailblazer in innovative goods movement, safety, environmental stewardship, and sustainability. Every year, we welcome 5,000 vessels from 217 seaports around the world. And the goods moving through the port reach every single congressional district in the United States. So the impact of this port is deep and broad. And now we're in the middle of a $4.5 billion capital improvement program, the largest in our nation, to create some of the most modern, efficient, and sustainable marine facilities in the world. This is my commercial. This is the Middle Harbor Project, which will be the cleanest and most technologically advanced container port in the world. I'm proud to say that last April, we signed a 40-year lease with OOCL in Hong Kong and Long Beach Container Terminal, and they will be operating that terminal for us, which is under construction as we speak. And we just broke ground for a $1 billion bridge that will not only meet the port's future needs, but also be an icon for our Southern California skyline. Hundreds of thousands of jobs depend on the success of our port, and commerce across the United States is affected by what we do at the Port of Long Beach. The role of women at the Port of Long Beach has also seen a lot of advances since the 1980s, and I want to tell you this a little bit from my own perspective. I came to Long Beach in 1974. I had just finished law school, and I began practicing law then. And I went to my first Bar Association meeting, and Louise Duvall was being installed as the first ever woman president of the Long Beach Bar. 20 years later, I was installed as the third woman president of the Long Beach Bar Association. Since then, I'm happy to say, many women have filled that office. In the meantime, I've had a very active law practice, mostly involving civil litigation. We've raised 2 daughters. One's a physician and the other a lawyer. And I didn't bring pictures like Ian did, but I have 3 beautiful grandchildren. I spent a lot of time also serving on a variety of community boards that were concerned with legal services, health issues, children, and education. But meanwhile, in 1979, Louise Duvall was the first woman ever appointed to serve as a member of the Long Beach Board of Harbor Commissioners. So in a lot of ways, she paved the way for me in international trade as well. During the past 102 years, there have been 64 commissioners at the Port of Long Beach, but only 4 of them, including myself, have been women. The 4 of us gathered together for a photo 2 years ago when we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the port, and these are the 4. Louise Duvall, who served from 1979 to 1990, Carmen Perez, who was the first Hispanic woman on the board, and she served from 91 to 2003, Doris Topsy-Elvord, who was the first Black woman, and she served from 2003 to 2008, and then myself, beginning in 2008. Still, never have 2 women served on the board at the same time, and I hope that changes before long. Each of these women has brought different and important skills and perspective to the work of the commission. Most importantly, each of these women has had an important involvement in the community before coming on the commission. The connection between a port and its community, I think, is very important. Our port was started by people of the community because people wanted the trade that it promised. And for our port to continue successfully, it must continue to stay connected to the community. I think that the women who have served as commissioners understand this particularly well. I think that they understand the intersection between commerce and industry and know best how to work to foster both. Now, we don't have really good figures from the port's early years, but our Human Resources Department put together some numbers for the past 30 years or so, tallying the port's percentage of female employees. Since 1982, that's 3 years after the first woman was appointed to the commission, employment of women at the port has increased from 20% to 35% today. In the ranks of management, it's grown from 8% to 17%. And in the professional ranks, the increase has been the greatest, moving from 10% to 44% today. But there's still a long way to go. Meanwhile, there have been changes on the docks, but this took litigation. In 1979, a small group of women who wanted to be longshoremen filed a class action lawsuit. And several years later, that resulted in a court decree. It's called the Golden Decree because one of the plaintiffs was named Golden. And that, the employment of women on the docks at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach was governed by this court decree under court supervision until the late 1990s. But it worked. At this point, more than 20% of the members of the ILWU are women, and they hold positions throughout the ranks of the union, including high-paying leadership jobs. and some of them are currently, some of the officers are currently women. I have to say, I remember in 1974 what it was like for women in law in the maritime industry. When I arrived in California, I was looking for a job, and I interviewed with a firm that practiced maritime law. I wanted to look professional, and I was going to an office for the interview, so I wore a suit and pumps. I didn't get the job. Among other things, they told me that I did not have the right shoes. How could I board a ship for an investigation in those shoes? So, let me tell you, it was with great delight that 2 years ago, as a harbor commissioner, I got on the pilot boat early in the morning, and I went out beyond the breakwater where the water is rough, and the pilot boat pulls up next to the ship, and I cross that gap where the water is roiling, and I climbed the Jacob's ladder, and I boarded the MSC Candace. And I have to say, that was a much bigger ship than they could have ever imagined in 1974 when they disparaged my footwear. Now, I did have the good sense to wear different shoes. So, what are we doing to ensure that young women continue to compete successfully for port jobs at all levels? We came up with something that I think is pretty cool, and I talked about it a little bit at the lunch if you were there the other day, and this was in connection with our centennial, and it actually rose out of that first picture I showed. If you saw, there was a woman, and a very buxom woman with a big hat in the middle of the first picture where the port is just being opened, and I was trying to figure out who she was. We've never figured out who she was, but we built this event around that curiosity. It serves 4 of my goals. One, it provides a tribute to the women pioneers in the maritime industry. Second, it acknowledges the outstanding women that are currently in the workforce. Third, it provides a mentoring opportunity for young women who are aspiring to be industry professionals. And fourth, it integrates our port with the local school system. It's very simple. We had about 200 people in attendance, double the first year's attendance when we did it last fall, and we're in the planning process now for the one that will happen in a couple months. We've been able to get trade-related companies who see the value of this to help sponsor the event. BNSF and Union Pacific are our main railroads here, the engineering firm of CH2M Hill, the law firm of Kiesel, Young & Logan, and 2 of our terminal operators, Long Beach Container Terminal and SSA Terminals, all stepped up. Here's the format. First, we go to the school district, and we work with the counselors and the teachers to identify high school students who would best benefit from the exchange that the lunch provides. Then, we identify pioneering women in the industry, including the 4 women I mentioned, as well as current women in industry, invite them to the lunch, and they sit alongside these promising high school students. Discussion leaders at each table, themselves industry professionals, direct the conversation, and then finally, I moderate a panel discussion with women who currently work in different areas of the maritime industry, talking about their inspiration, their education, their career paths, their victories and accomplishments, their job responsibilities, and typical work days. And they each have wonderful stories to tell. The panelists come from different segments of the industry and also different stages of maritime careers, everything from a summer intern to a Coast Guard commander to chief harbor engineer, women in sales, women who have been to sea. And by the end of the lunch, the students have learned about trade, about the port, and about the opportunities that are available to them if they choose to pursue them. So I have a video which I can show at the end of this presentation, and I'll do that in a minute. But just going back to where we are, women are starting to take their roles in executive positions at the ports in California. For the first time in the history of the state of California, at each of the 3 major ports, Oakland, Los Angeles, and Long Beach, the commission is chaired by a woman, and I'm proud to be one of them. And at least 2 California ports are led by executive directors who are women. Now we're going backwards. There we go. Geraldine Natz, familiar face here at the conference, who I'm proud to say came to the Port of Los Angeles from the Port of Long Beach, and Kristen Dekos, who is the executive director at Port Hueneme. The groups that have spoken before me, WTS and WISTA, I think are very important to the role of women in this industry. I think the luncheon event that we have done is very important. I think this discussion, this type of a discussion at every conference is very important. I think we need to continue to support each other and to work on issues that are important to all women. Equal pay, good daycare, family medical leave, reduced work schedules. I've seen the importance of these things in my own daughter's lives as they become mothers and professionals. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the conversation. I will, shall I run the video? No? Okay, we'll skip the video. If you want to see it later, I'd be happy to show it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And I think maybe those lunches that you have made is an answer to Marsha when she was talking about not the formal programs is the answer for this. So maybe the lunch is something of an answer. When we planned this session, we talked about it was more important to share than to debate. And the time is running out for us. And as you know, women, we are famous for always holding the time. So we'll do that this time as well. So you would like one question? There is one prepared question, I think. And I would like to let Mr. Van Leer
Thank you very much.
take that.
My name is Ferber de Laar.
We turn on
I'm with the IAPH. I have a question for Karin on how does she see the future relationship between the groups which are represented in this building over here and WISTA.
Karin, that was a question for you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the very interesting question, and I think we made a start already here today, because I think it's all about working together, and especially if you have all mentorship and mentee programs in place, and act in different ways. So for me, I see this more as not only a WISTA. Actually, we within the WISTA have a kind of teasing, because we have we have male members as well, and I would be in favor of changing it in the future into PISTA, which would be People in Shipping and Trading Association, but that's maybe a little bit a step too far. And the big question could be, is there really a need for a women's forum like this, or a female entrepreneurship prize, etc., etc.? Yes, I think so. I think we are, all of us here today are leaders and are examples or role models. It's just how you mention it. But we are here to show the next generation the interesting part about our business. And of course, maritime, aviation, transportation, name it. We have a lack of technical people and of younger people who are interested to join our business. And so, yes, building bridges, and if that's only WISTA or I have to say WTS, because if I start W, it's going to be a mess. But and the organization where we are talking to today, because and the challenge for you is that your members are, if I'm correctly, the ports. So, and of course you have port directors, but this is only a part of the total chain for us. So, yes, there is a need for an organization like this, and I think we should cooperate and try to find a way how to do that.
Marsha.
Marcia? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
So my comment to that question is, there's power in numbers. So the more we can get these associations to collaborate with one another and work towards building the awareness globally that this is an issue that is not being fixed yet. We are barely moving the needle on this. And as I told you, U.S. is at 5% CEO represented by women, 5% of women represent CEOs. I mean, I'd like to learn from South Korea. I would like to learn from the Republic of China. I mean, these are important initiatives, and we have to come together to form a global alliance that will get us the results that we're looking for.
It seems that every organization has focused on this, so we have come so far at this time. Karin?
Now, I wanted to add to Marcia her words that when I said role model, but it's also about being, what Pamela, I think, on purpose said right, it's about being visible for the organization. And what I often try to do is once you're in the network of people or speaking or in board positions, you're often asked because you are visible. So what I like to do, and I think that is a very good way to go forward, and that's why I love this WISTA network so much, because if they approach me and say, okay, I would like to have you as a speaker on that and that date on sustainability, and okay, my knowledge is till a certain limit. But I know women who have a way better knowledge of that. I will put them forward and introduce them to the network, because we also have to start with our own. And I'm quite offended if people tell me there's an old boys network, because I say, come on, I'm part of that old boys network myself for many years, and if I can't make the difference, I cannot put it to the others and say they have to. We have to do it together. And yeah, at least that's how I try to achieve the things which, and pave the way for not only the future generation, but also the women I already know. That's...
Yeah, Susan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like to think that we're forming an old girls network.
Yeah.
And I thought...
I appreciate your comment, truly.
And I liked Marcia's idea of adding or expanding the idea of mentorship to sponsorship. I think that's important, and that's really what old boys networks, old girls networks are about, I think, is that it does change it from a sort of a tutelage to a promotion, and where you're promoting other people, and I think that's very important. But I can't say enough, I don't think, how important I think it is that at these conferences, whoever's putting them on, that there continues to be a conversation like this, because I think it just serves as a reminder to all of us of the work that needs to be done. And then we go back to our own communities, our own places where we work, and we try to incorporate that into whatever it is that we're doing. So I say, let's do it, let's hang in there, we're going to get it done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we let that be the last word. And yes, the IAPH has a focus on this, and we are thankful to that, all the women who are here, and also the men who is here. And Naomi, I would like to give you the final word. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to the moderator, and Sigrid, to Marcia, Karin, and Susan. I think this was very stimulating, very interesting, and we look forward to much more cooperation and much more participation of IAPH with these organizations and within IAPH. This is number one, the first time we've had this, and I hope we'll have many more. We have I'm going to ask the ladies who at the Monday lunch volunteered to be more active to join us at lunch so we can assign some tasks for the future cooperation between us. Those ladies represent the continent, the different continents, and they will hopefully help us take the word and the message to their continents and to a much bigger operation of advancing and empowering women in the maritime industry. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you all at the midterm conference in Sydney next year.